Hello everyone and welcome back to another Grimgar video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Volume 11 of Grimgar. If you're new to my review series, I am going to summarize the story, then I'm going to talk about the good and the bad at the end of the video, and the characters. And then I will give it a score from A+ all the way down to F. Before I continue, I do want to point out that this is around the time in the Grimgar story where a lot of people dropped the books. I can see why. I'm actually going to make an entirely different video talking about that in the future, so be on the lookout for that. But to make it very clear, the next couple books in the series are usually seen as the less well-written and less interesting books starting from this point onward. This book, Volume 11, is kind of in that area too a little bit. Just know that most likely the next couple book reviews are going to be a little meaner than the other ones. But if you enjoy these videos, please like button, share, tell me in the comments down below, and let's get into it. Grimgar Fantasy and Ash, Level 11. At the time, we each dreamed on our own path. The beginning of this volume starts right where the last volume actually left off. Haru is basically just staring at Mary, who's essentially dead at this point, and he has kind of a mental breakdown, but in a way that is not what we are used to seeing from Haru at this point. In past books, Haru's mental breakdowns have been very, very sad, and he would actually blame himself and a bunch of, other horrible things. This mental breakdown is very, very different. He shuts his emotions down and focuses on murdering the gorillas who are outside fighting his teammates. For a solid second, he also forgot where he was, who he was looking at, which was Mary, and he had to pull himself back into a certain state of mind to go out and finish the job because his party needed him to be a leader. So he leaves the jail where Mary's body was and where Satora and Chihiro also are. He goes outside and sees that Yume and Kuzuku are still fighting the gorillas, and Kuzuku's basically killing any gorilla that gets near the jail. To the point where the gorillas are scared to even go near him. And Yume is kind of playing support by helping him keep the gorillas off his back. But she's mostly just jumping back and forth and dodging, bobbing, and weaving. She's kind of just being a menace to the gorillas, if I'm being honest. But it's working out. She's doing work. Haru then mentally prepares himself and gets ready to jump into the battle and to support Kuzuku and Yume. The scene then transitions to actually Ranta, funny enough. Ranta is crawling on all fours, trying to sneak up on a frog who, oddly enough, has eyes on its own butt. So this thing has normal frog eyes and then just eyes on its ass. That's really gross. But Ranta is hopping after this frog and finally eventually catches it after what seems like kind of an hour or so of chasing after this frog. He then takes his knife, cuts it open, and eats the meat from the inside. He is grossed out by this, but he's hungry and he needs food. So he's got to do what he's got to do to survive. Ranta then hears his name being shouted out by somebody, and it is Takashi actually looking for him. Ranta hides from him, but eventually Takashi knows that he's actually hiding behind a tree. Ranta eventually steps out, and Takashi fights Ranta with a wooden stick. Takashi would use his branch to deflect Ranta's metal sword by actually moving slightly to the side and then just deflecting it by moving the sword out of the way with the branch instead of actually blocking the attack with the branch, because obviously that would cut it in half very easily. And then he would just bop Ranta in the face with the branch, or kick Ranta, or punch Ranta. He slaps him down and sits on Ranta's back and kind of just starts smoking out of his pipe. He then tells Ranta that he will be his teacher if he wants him to be, because he can see Ranta having some potential. Ranta then agrees to go back to Forgun with Takashi and have him train him. The scene then switches back to Haru and his party fighting off gorillas. And it's been made very clear that his party is exhausted. Kuzuku is basically having his own mental breakdown while swinging at every single gorilla that comes by him, which, again, Kuzuku is a champ. He's been killing off hordes of these fuckers this entire time, and his body count is probably massive. But he is constantly just saying, I can keep going, I can keep going, I can keep going. I'm good, I can keep going, and it's getting really obvious that Kuzuku's just about to collapse. Eventually, Chihiro and Satora actually come out from the jail as well, and they start helping them out too. Kuzuku gets kind of swarmed by gorillas at one point, and Chihiro has to use her dark ability to actually get them off of him. And at some point, Jesse shows up with his rangers, and Jesse casts a giant fireball spell, and also his rangers are throwing what seems to be oil at the gorillas as well, and they all start getting lit on fire. Around this time, the smiling redback gorilla started showing up and making faces at Haru, which by this point pissed off Haru quite a lot, because he's kind of going on a vicious killing spree. Granted, he's also exhausted, but he is killing gorillas too. And Haru realizes that Jesse was using his party as decoys to gather up the gorillas in one area, which pissed off Haru quite a lot. The smiling redback then decides he's going to run away, and Jesse casts Firewall. The smiling redback actually jumps through the firewall, lighting itself on fire while it's still covered in oil. Haru is done with this gorilla and actually chases after him while limping, but Haru's still on that gorilla ass. Eventually, Haru does catch up to the gorilla, and he realizes that the gorilla is just completely dead. Jesse, his rangers, and Haru's party eventually catch up to Haru, and Haru lays into Jesse, telling him that if it wasn't for Jesse's plan, Mary might still be alive. Jesse then turns to his rangers, says something in Orcish, but Haru picks up on the word Volu, which sounds like a monster out of Monster Hunter. That sounds cool, though. And his rangers make kind of grim expressions. He then turns back to Haru and tells him he needs to see the condition of the body, but he might have a way of helping her. But Haru and them finally decide to go back to the jail cell and actually show Jesse the body. The scene then transitions back to Ranta, funny enough, but it's Ranta having a dream. In this dream, Ranta is actually back in his old life as he tries to sneak back into his house. He walks into his home and he realizes his mother's sitting on the couch drinking a shit ton of wine. It is then basically told to us that Ranta's family is very dysfunctional. While he is very well off, he is not exactly seen as the best person in their family and is the black sheep. His parents look down at him quite a lot, especially his mother, specifically because Ranta looks like his father, which, oh boy, that's a lot of stuff to have to unpack to your child, because Jesus, because she keeps mentioning how much he looks like his dad, and she just does not treat him well. It's really messed up. His mother then vomits, and Ranta feels bad for her and tries to help clean it up by giving her a bucket and some towels, and then he rushes upstairs and hides in his room because he just doesn't want to be around his family right now, obviously. And he curls up into a ball under his bed sheets, and he cries to himself that it is his birthday, and he just wished somebody would just tell him happy birthday. Ooh, listen, that is a lot to unpack there. I will talk about this in a separate video, but I'll tell you what, I did feel bad for Ranta here. Holy crap. So then wakes up from his dream, and then he realizes he's actually in a tree. He also hears Takashi again screaming out for Ranta, because it turns out Ranta again has abandoned Forgun for the second time. And Takashi's looking for him because he's, well, pretty pissed off because Ranta abandoned Forgun twice, and he's either looking to kill Ranta or drag him back to Forgun again. Ranta then gets out of the tree and kind of pretends to run away from Takashi, and Takashi chases after him. Ranta then turns around and starts swinging at Takashi quickly to try catching him off guard, and him and Ranta have a decent back and forth. Takashi has been training Ranta for a little bit apparently off screen, and Ranta seems to have internalized Takashi's teachings of taking away anything that is not necessary from the combat. As in, Ranta likes to do a bunch of extra, stuff to show off. Takashi's essentially taught him to take all that away and actually do everything only when it's necessary in combat, making Ranta a lot more streamlined in his fighting style. Takashi gets pretty close to hurting Ranta a couple times, and Ranta remembers the wind attack that Moguzu was using back in Volume 1, 2, and 3. And he actually mimics this exact attack. Ranta pushes his sword up Takashi's katana and slashes at his face, giving him a little cut on his cheek. After that, Takashi kind of goes into overdrive and starts swinging at Ranta a lot faster and a lot more aggressively. And Ranta, surprise, remembers he is a Dread Knight and tells him he's going to fight like one. Ranta uses Exhaust a couple times to make some distance between him and Takashi, and then he summons his demon. Zodiac shows up and, of course, gives Ranta a bunch of shit. Ranta also uses Dread Venom, which causes people who get hit by the cloud that he projects out of his body to feel sick and actually get a small debuff. Takashi dodges this and then proceeds to go at not only Ranta, but Zodiac. While fighting, Ranta reflects on what he wants. He wants to go back to his friends, and he actually remembers how much he misses Moguzu. He refers Moguzu as his business partner, and he wishes to open up his own ramen shop as a way to say thank you to Moguzu for being his only real friend. Ranta seems to have actually resolved his internal conflict on not understanding what he personally wants in the world. And Zodiac actually gets a huge power-up for some reason. Zodiac goes from having a hatchet and a little hammer, and his cloak actually comes off, and is replaced by a set of armor with a hood, and a giant scythe. Ranta, taking advantage of this, immediately uses Dread Aura and powers himself up, and him and Zodiac jump Takashi together. And they do a great job of holding him off, but Ultimately, Ranta uses Zodiac as a way to get away from Takashi by holding him off for a little bit as he runs away. Takashi kills Zodiac and makes him dispel, but Ranta actually does get a chance to run away. We then transition back to Haru and his party and Jesse finding Mary's body. Obviously, some of the people in Haru's party don't take well to finding Mary's body. Yume and Kuzuku in particular don't do well with it, and Kuzuku actually stays outside because he doesn't want to look at her body. And Jesse has to take a look at Mary's body. Jesse then tells them the thing that he can do to save her is obviously not natural. And he asks Haru and Shiharu, are they sure that they want him to bring Mary back to life? Because he can do so, but he tells them, you know that there's something not right here. And while Jesse can't give too many details for some reason, he lets them know that this is something very, very dark and very, very wrong. Chihiro and Haru then both agree that they want him to bring her back to life. He tells them, do not, under any circumstances, let anyone in this room, doesn't matter if they're part of his ranger squad, you let no one in no matter what. Because Jesse has to essentially sacrifice his own life to bring Mary back to life. But he then cuts his wrist and blood starts gushing out of it. He places his wrist and his arm right on Mary's shoulder where she was bit. And Jesse essentially has to sit there while holding his arm to Mary's body for a very long time. But more time passes and Jesse's body just kind of starts to turn into a crumpled bag. You know that scene from Dragon Ball Z with Cell sucking a guy dry of their insides? That's literally Jesse. Also around this time, all the crows outside start losing their mind. And they all start balking, crowing, chirping. These start losing their minds, flying around. And it's very clear that whatever is happening to Jesse's body and to Mary is not okay and is not natural. It's so gross to the point where Haru even vomits. And all Haru can think of is that he's going to take responsibility for whatever happens as long as he gets to meet Mary again. We then transition back to Ranta as he's making his way through a jungle with Zodiac. He notices that Zodiac is kind of back to his normal form for some reason. And then out of nowhere, a giant fuck-off jaguar lands on Zodiac and rips him into pieces. Ranta starts to run away because, unfortunately, he lost his longsword while he was fighting Takashi. And all he has is a knife. But the jaguar eventually starts to catch up to him, and Ranta gets ready to fight the jaguar with just a knife. And he comes up with the plan to sacrifice one of his arms if it means killing the jaguar. But out of nowhere, a katana lands between him and the jaguar. Ranta takes the katana and quickly kills the jaguar. He notices there's only one area where the katana could have come from, is a small hill above him, and he makes his way up to the top of that hill. There, he finds a katana sheath, and he realizes that Takashi must have been the one that dropped the katana for him. He then falls to his knees and actually starts to sob over the fact that even after Ranta betrayed Takashi like twice, Takashi still helped him. We then transition to another scene of Mary having a dream. And she's going through her memories of being with her family, seeing her parents, her father dying, her life in school, and her inability to connect to people, her going through essentially not understanding romantic attachments with people in her high school, and then her memories shift to Jesse's memories for some reason. And then after Jesse's memories, the memories switch to the lady who saved Jesse's life at the beginning of volume 10. And then it switches to a wizard man and possibly an orc, and then some creature that we cannot figure out what their thoughts are at all. It's just weird, and I'll show you the pages of just pure gibberish. The memories of all these different creatures all flow into Mary. And Mary starts feeling incredibly uncomfortable about all these feelings and these memories flowing into her body. And it's very heavily implied that all these souls are being forced into her. She then wakes up to Haru and everyone else around her, but not before she kind of starts leaking, I think, blood from every single orifice on her body. But Mary seems to be alive again, and she asks everyone what happened. They explain to her what happened, and then she starts coming up with an idea of going to the storage building in town, and she searches through Jesse's body, gets the keys, and starts making plans to head to the storage place. Haru is kind of baffled because he doesn't understand why she is essentially knowing all the stuff, but they do head to the storage area, and along the way, they get attacked by Volus. One of them actually jumps onto Kuzuku, and everyone freaks out and doesn't actually, follow up to go help Kuzuku. They're just kind of frozen in place. Except for Mary, who immediately runs out, casts a light spell to stun the monster, which gives Kuzuku the chance to actually cut its head off. But thanks to Mary's quick action, everyone starts actually going to fight the Volus, which again, these kids have not eaten or slept in a while, and they are exhausted. So these kids being able to fight these things off is a miracle. But Mary and Chihiro, along with Satora, go into the storage area to get weapons and more clothes, while Haru and Kuzuku and Yume start fighting off the monsters. Unfortunately for Haru, he gets launched through one of the walls, and Mary runs up to him butt-ass naked, mind you, and tries to comfort Haru because he got hurt and she tries to heal him. Satora immediately yells at Mary and tells her to put clothes on. Mary does not seem to find being naked a problem. And Haru tries to keep his eyes closed because he's kind of embarrassed to see her naked because he saw her completely naked. Which admittedly was kind of funny, I'll be honest. It's probably one of the first funny things that happened in this entire volume besides Ranta. Eventually, Mary heals Haru, she gets closed up, and Satora hands everyone spears. She explains that killing the Volu is a lot easier with spears, and everyone starts stabbing and throwing spears at the Volu. And this causes the Volu to actually back off quickly. And they get a little bit out of the town before, out of absolutely nowhere, they get attacked by these weird caterpillar black creature things that Mary has a very weird reaction to. And she makes a weird comment about cicadas for some reason. Either way, these caterpillar things start coming up out of nowhere and start grabbing Haru and his friends. It starts touching them, starts to affect them extremely negatively, to the point where Haru and Kuzuku start bleeding out of their eyes, mouths, and ears. But out of nowhere, Mary casts what seems to be a fireball spell that causes a giant explosion at the base of all of the caterpillar things and blows them all away. They then run away, and that's the end of the volume. Haru does make some mental notes about how weird Mary is being, but that's kind of it. So, yeah, this volume is odd. So, like I mentioned earlier, Volume 10 and Volume 11 is where the writing for Grimgar kind of starts to get a little sloppy. The 3-act structure of books kind of goes out the window starting from Volume 10. And honestly, Volume 10 and Volume 11 came out the same year specifically because of the problem with like light novels and having a limit of how many things they can actually put in a single light novel, which ultimately brings both these volumes down because of how awkward certain things are placed. I didn't mention this in my last video, but it affects this book specifically a little more than Volume 10 because this feels like a climax of a bigger book. And honestly, I really wish you could just put Volume 10 and Volume 11 together as a very large volume because I have to make more videos talking about this in the future, but Grimgar's biggest problem is that it is a light novel. If it wasn't for that, I think there'd be a lot more good things going on within. A lot of the problems with Grimgar wouldn't be as bad. But this volume, I think, does do a lot of good stuff. Like the stuff with Ranta is actually really well done. The stuff with Mary and all of that is really interesting because it sets up a lot of stuff in the future, and it also pays off from some stuff in the past that some people may have actually noticed if you paid attention to it. In terms of characters, the only ones that get anything in this book specifically is Haru, Mary, and Ranta. Haru kind of shows more leadership skills when she keeps calm and certain stuff, but that's kind of not too much. And they give Satora some more characterization by making her a lot more level-headed and come up with ways to killing off the Volu, which that helped out a lot. But in a lot of ways, this kind of just feels like a climax of another book. They just shaved it off and made it its own book. And again, this is the problem with light novels, and this is why this book came out the same exact year as Volume 10. But judging it on its own, it's technically worse. Not worse than Volume 10, but not great either. The stuff that is in the book is decent, but I definitely understand why people complain so much about Grimgar's story after this point, because this is where the writing structure gets a little sloppy. But at the same time, I'm guessing some people can probably argue that light novels are designed this way so they can spread them out through more books on purpose, but it still just doesn't feel very good to me personally. But overall, I did find a lot of stuff that I enjoyed. I did, in terms of enjoyment, have a good time in this book. There is a lot of exhaustion, though, because of just how much negative stuff happens to Haru and his friends, that it becomes mentally taxing to keep having to read through the books for that long without anything like good happening to them or anything funny. There's not much levity in the book, except for like here and there with Ranta and like the thing that happened with Mary and Haru at the end of the book. So it makes it kind of exhausting to read. So overall, I think I do have to actually give this book about a C+. There are stuff that I really did enjoy, but the structure of like the way the book is written is just very sloppy to me. And that to me brings stuff down a lot. But all the really good stuff when it comes to world building and Ranta's character development, it brings it up to, it stops it from being any lower than a C+ to me. Hey everyone, before I end this video, I'd like to let you all know that I won't be back making videos on TikTok or YouTube for a little while. I'm going to go on a mental health break. I'll be back around the 30th, and I'll just be taking a little bit of a time off just for my own mental health well-being. And I will be still live streaming on Twitch. You guys want to check me out on there, like Tuesdays and Thursdays, like normally, because that's not really all that taxing. Plus, it's fun to play with my friends. Thank you for watching this far, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye. Special thank you for this month's Twitch subs. Thank you to Norberto Games, The Rhyme Hero, Boobulu86, Dio, RJ Has Problems, Van_Hoofenstein, Tokamine, Wisteria Hysteria, Josias97, and Gracie_. Thank you all for your subscriptions.